Hi, everyone. Welcome to the first HR Chief webinar of 2024. We're going to give people about 5 minutes to join here. While we wait, if you want to drop your location in the chat so we can see where everyone is joining from. I'm calling in from Boulder, Colorado, where it is both sunny and snowy at the same time. What about you, Joe?
Vancouver, British Columbia, where it is temperate and rainy, just like every winter.
Nice. Looking forward to seeing where people are coming in from. Hey, Delaney. Some other Colorado folks. Nice.
Another Canadian, too.
Yeah, a couple. LA. Nice. Joe, are you in Canada year round, or do you ever snowboard or snowbird move
So
around?
we do move around. We love this part of the world, but this year's been actually kind of temperate and slushy. We only had 2 or 3 ski days, and the rest of the time it's been like 40 degrees and rainy.
Yeah. Nice to have that flexibility.
It's one of the reasons we love living here.
Buffalo, talk about snow.
Ah,
Yes, you will get a recording and plenty of links. We're going to be really liberal with sharing everything that we're talking about here today, including the recording through email. And then we'll also be dropping links to resources and stuff that we mentioned during the webinar in chat. So obviously feel free to take your own notes, but we're going to try and share as much of this as we can with all of you. Such a bad rap. Yeah.
ah.
All right, we're at 3 minutes past, maybe another 2 minutes. Again, if you're just joining us and want to drop your location in the chat, we're sharing where we're calling in from. I'm from Boulder, Colorado. International, nice. Joe, do you have any plans for the weekend?
So it's interesting this time of year, right? We would normally love to go skiing, but
Yeah,
this time of year it's rainy and yeah, we don't get to do that too much. So with any luck
yeah,
this weekend, we'll be picking up the yard and getting ready for the spring.
good stuff. Boston, Detroit, Bay Area, nice.
People are from everywhere.
Yeah, thanks for joining us from such a wide variety of spots. All right, we're at 2:04. I imagine most everyone who has joined us today will have already joined, but of course we'll let them in even if they call in late. Joe, you want to you ready to get things kicked off, and I can start us off here?
Absolutely. Let's get started.
Sounds great. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's HR Chief webinar. You're doing performance reviews wrong and how to fix it with Joe Bast, VP of People and Operations at Thoropass. Again, thanks for joining us today. Want to go through some preliminaries before we get started. I'm your host, Albert Wavering. And some preliminary information before we get into today's presentation. We're going to be keeping chat open for comments and discussion during the presentation. But if you have a particular question that you'd like our speaker to answer, please use Zoom's Q&A functionality, including thumbs upping any questions that you would like to see Joe answer after his part of the presentation. Joe's going to take about 15 minutes at the end, go through questions, and we're going to prioritize those based off of their thumbs up count. So if you see something that you want to see answered, give that a vote with a thumbs up. And now a quick word from our organizer and sponsor. This event has been organized by HR Chief and PeoplePeople. HR Chief is an HR-focused resource center, including free AI tools, templates, and job board dedicated to improving the human resources and people operations industry. HR Chief strives to make work engaging, equitable, and impactful, empowering people leaders to make a positive difference in their roles. Learn more at hrchief.com. And PeoplePeople is a community of thousands of HR, people ops, and recruiting professionals. It's a place to connect, ask questions, share best practices, and learn from one another. Started in 2016 and hosted by HR Chief, PeoplePeople includes members from all over the world. Apply to join the community at peoplepeople.group. I'm sure many people here today are from the PeoplePeople group. It's a fun bunch of folks. If you are, welcome and good to see you. This event is sponsored by our friends at Confirm. Confirm is pioneering a revolution in performance reviews. Built on the methodology of organizational network analysis, Confirm makes performance reviews less biased, more accurate, and easier, so leaders can make fair talent decisions faster. Performance reviews should be a profoundly valuable process, but too often they're just a box to check and a waste of time. No one likes the status quo, and it's time to change it. Only Confirm helps people leaders remove the exhaustion, subjectivity, and bias and politics in performance reviews. By attending today's webinar, and this is really cool, you'll receive a 20% discount off your first year with Confirm if you book a demo this week. If you book a demo today, Confirm will waive the $10,000 onboarding fee. So what a bonus. That's awesome. Thanks to Confirm for offering that. If you know performance reviews at your company are broken, look for the follow-up email from Confirm for more information. And I think we'll also be dropping a link to Confirm in the chat as well. So look for that as well. All right, now on to the main show. Our speaker today is Joe Bast, VP of People and Operations at Thoropass. Joe's an experienced executive leader with a deliberate focus on bringing out the best in people and solving hard business problems through process and persistence. Most recently, he's served as a C-suite executive, VP of People, and HR thought leader and coach. He's also held roles as a talent management professional, learning expert, and organizational development consultant. Joe possesses extensive experience leading teams to solve people, learning, and operational challenges. During his career, he's worked with organizations and their senior executives across a variety of industries, including technology, healthcare, and finance. We'll start today's presentation by reviewing the goals, history, and development of performance reviews. I've never worked in HR before. I'm a marketing and analytics guy, but I've certainly had my fair share of time-consuming and opaque performance reviews, so I'm excited to hear about the alternatives. Should be exciting. The motivations behind performance reviews are usually based on good intentions, right? One primary purpose of performance reviews is to support and guide the professional development of employees. Performance reviews provide a structured opportunity for managers to give constructive feedback, discuss skills development, and set clear goals for employees. Performance reviews also provide a structured employee for managers to give constructive feedback, discuss skills development, and set clear goals. Alignment and connection from broader team goals to the individual is key to organizational success, as it ensures that everyone on the team is working towards common goals. And third, performance reviews also serve as a critical communication period between employees and management. They're an opportunity for open dialogue where employees can share their thoughts, concerns, and aspirations, while also receiving feedback on their performance and sharing upwards feedback. Regular and effective communication through performance reviews improves employee engagement. 43% of highly engaged employees receive feedback at least once a week. Now, these are noble intentions, but let's take a closer look at where they originated and how things can go wrong. Manager ratings, the traditional 1 through 5 rating system, started over 100 years ago and actually began in the US military after World War I, and it was then brought into the workplace in the 1920s. Appraisals can be traced back to the US military's merit rating system, which was created during World War I to identify poor performers for discharge or transfer. And way back then, work was a little bit more solitary, a little bit more repetitive. They obviously didn't have any internet and they barely had telephones. Work has changed a lot since then, and the way employers view employees should too. Even Jack Welch's famous use of appraisals at General Electric turned out to be counterproductive. A few years after Jack Welch left GE, the company quietly backed away from forced ranking because it fostered internal competition and undermined collaboration. Despite the evolution of the workplace, most organizations still rely on appraisals in some way. And it's no wonder that they're not giving us the results that we expect. Even though we may not exclusively use manager appraisals, much of that model still applies in modern performance reviews. You've probably used or at least heard of 360 reviews. The first 360 reviews, like manager appraisals, came out of the military in the 1930s. The methodology has been around for a long time, but the actual branding of 360 reviews came in the 1990s. Unlike manager-only appraisals, 360 reviews can improve visibility depending on how they're administered. They do take a lot of time. Unfortunately, they don't provide much opportunity, they don't provide much for that opportunity cost of time. They can help from a developmental perspective, but they can be challenging when it comes to actual performance. The process hasn't evolved much since its inception, and getting employees to complete them can be challenging, again, because of time. Being able to choose peers for 360 reviews can also hurt employees who cherry pick the safe choice when seeking feedback through 360-degree reviews. Unfortunately, manager ratings also have a huge amount of bias. 60% of manager ratings are based on their own idiosyncrasies. So where does this leave us? We have a problem with performance reviews. If you're here, you know that, and you're not alone. Fewer than 1 in 3 employees think performance reviews are very fair and equitable, and 64% see them as a partial or complete waste of time that doesn't help them perform better. Not even 20% of companies rated their process as highly effective at providing high-quality feedback and coaching, and around 70% of companies are now reconsidering their performance management strategy. Does this sound familiar? In terms of incentive structures, the common scenario today is that an employee's career growth often depends on their manager's ability to advocate and influence on their behalf, which doesn't have a lot to do with the employee themselves. It's easy for performance reviews to default to popularity contests. And nowadays, employees have more touch points than ever, especially on remote and distributed teams. Think Slack or Teams chats, collaboration software, whatever you use. A lot more touch points, a lot more data, a lot more communications. But managers oftentimes have less visibility than before. And again, the financial impact of this can be pretty staggering. The financial impact of losing a top performer is 3 times greater than losing an average employee. So there has to be a better way focusing on retaining employees who have the most impact at your organization. People are our biggest expense, and yet that's also the area where we often have the least amount of data and visibility. The only way to know top performers is through better data. Fortunately, there's hope in fixing performance reviews. Science has caught up to the way that we work, and we'll explore now how to fix performance reviews with Joe's help. By doing that, to start, we'll take a look at organizational network analysis. Joe, do you want to take off here, or I
will jump in. No worries.
Okay, cool.
All right. So one of the things Albert said, which I really agree with, is that performance reviews are antiquated. They came from a long time ago. We were trying to help organizations better align themselves. Employee performance and company's performance needs to come together to be able to make better decisions about who should be rewarded, about who should be identified for future roles, and in general, who should be leading the company, leading teams. So there we go. Sorry. All right. There we go. Come on. Okay, I think I finally
Almost
caught up.
there, made it. Sorry about that. Thanks, Joe.
No worries at all. So in my career, I've been an industrial psychologist for the last 25 years. And during that time, I've only seen a couple of really good innovations in performance reviews. One of them came in the mid-1990s, which we've already talked about, which is 360-degree feedback. But more recently, when you look at probably the best innovation in performance review since then, is this idea of continuous feedback, that leaders and employees are trying to get feedback consistently with their ability to monitor their own performance and therefore guide the performance of others. One of the best innovations in the last 25 years is what we're referring to today called organizational network analysis. It fits the way we work in modern times. It gives us a chance to see how other people view us or would give us feedback. But most importantly, it allows the organization to be less reliant on manager ratings and more reliant on identifying who the high performers are. So when we think about typical performance appraisals, most of us think about this 5-point Likert scale, from doesn't meet minimum requirements to outstanding. And then what we generally find is that managers tend to use the middle of the scale, maybe even a little bit higher. And when we look at doesn't meet minimum requirements, those folks are actually not using the bottom of the scale at all. So we think about manager prides ratings, or hoping for what's we think is a normal distribution. The average rating is actually not a 3. It's more like a 3.5 or a 3.75. The 1 doesn't get used, the 5 gets overused. It makes it very difficult to differentiate high performers and almost impossible to identify those high performers across the organization. So what we think performance appraisal ratings look like is this normal curve, this idea of a bell curve. We would love to think it's a normal distribution, but what really happens is you end up using the 4 and the 5 more frequently than the 1 and the 2. What it actually looks like is this negative skew, meaning we don't use the 1 and the 2, and it's a curve that actually leans to the right. So there's a new way. Organizational network analysis is this idea that performers are working with each other and their peers more frequently than they're just working with their bosses. Rather than relying just on manager ratings, Confirm, the platform that we use at Thoropass and the host of the webinar today, Confirm uses organizational network analysis to be able to better identify top performers, to make performance management a lighter lift, and then to ensure that people have an easy way to nominate people and get their ratings. So the way organizational network analysis works, rather than just relying on these 5-point ratings, we actually have people across the organization nominate and identify who the top performers are. And so there's questions that Confirm uses, like who energized you over the last 6 months, who advised you over the last 6 months, and who deserves a gold star or could be identified as a top performer. So here's what we discovered. Performance actually is not a bell curve. Performance looks much more like a hockey stick curve or a power law. What that means is with these questions, who energized you, who advised you, who deserves a gold star, you'll find that 20% of your population is actually doing most of the work on performance. So the way Confirm works, which is these 3 questions, who energized you, who advised you, and who deserves a gold star, through using this type of nomination process, we discovered that we could identify 15% of our top performers. And how we identify them is through this nomination process.
It's really surprising, Joe, that the skew is so high there. I know that oftentimes we talk about, Pareto distribution or 80-20 splits in other contexts, but it's really interesting to see this data in the context of leading teams and looking at individual performance on those teams.
Yeah, absolutely. And then what you do end up finding is that these top 15% or 20% of your performers have an impact on the entire organization. And so what we did is we identified our top 15% or 27 people at our company who had the most impact on others. Now, when you think about the most impact on other people, you'll very quickly find out that managers can't identify those people if they're not working with them every day. Similarly, individuals don't have much say into the performance of others unless we use the nomination process like organizational network analysis. So the network sees what managers can't see. And what that means is, especially in this remote environment or an environment that is very matrixed, managers don't see their people every day, but people see their peers every day. So the way it works is employees have an opportunity to nominate 5 people for each of the following 6 questions over the last 6 months. Who energized you, who advised you, and who deserves a gold star. And so when you look at the distribution, what you quickly find is that the top 10 or 15% are having the most impact on others at the organization. So here's how it worked for us. And we've done this with Confirm 4 different cycles over the last 2 years. Um, After we identified the top 27 people, we achieved 96% performance review completion, meaning rather than having 70 or 80% of your managers get their performance reviews done, within a week of launching the process, we had 96% completion. After we identified the top 27 people, we did some things like stay interviews, which I'll talk about in a minute. And we looked at our overall employee retention. And what you found out very quickly was we were able to engage and retain 100% of our top performers. And because these people were identified and having an impact across the whole organization, in addition to retaining 100% of our top performers, we actually were able to drive down our employee attrition rate below 10%.
And Joe, that was over the Great Resignation last couple of years sort of time frame, right?
100%. This was actually when other companies were experiencing, just a loss, a flow of talent out the door, and we were able to retain 100% of our top performers.
Awesome.
So we engaged our top performers after they are identified with outsized rewards, meaning they were given double-digit raises, they were given base compensation increases, and bonuses based on their performance. We also increased equity participation, meaning our highest performers got new equity awards in our company. And then each top performer was identified and given what we refer to as a stay interview. So each of them talked with one of our founders or one of our senior leaders about what was working at the company, about what might be broken, about why they stay, and what we should do to have other people stay. So a couple things. I think the most important thing is that as you identify as top 15% of your performers and you do things to engage them and help them stay, they will have an impact on the rest of the folks. Remember, people generally leave companies not because they're not performing, but because they don't have great relationships. So assuming you have compensation and participation in your with your company's leaders, those people stick around and they don't leave, and the impact they have on the rest of the company is dramatic. Meaning what you end up with is a bunch of people who are connected to their colleagues, are being most influenced by their colleagues, and are actually having better relationships at work. So Confirm, let me tell you a little bit about this platform. Confirm is probably the lightest lift, meaning performance reviews get done in rapid completion. I actually just talked with our VP of marketing today, Aaron, and Aaron was so clear when he was done. He's like, this is a really light lift. I've never been with a company that uses a process that's so easy to complete. The other thing that happens is that people enjoy the performance conversations. They actually like to sit down and hear who nominated them, who advised them, and who energized them. And so a couple of things that Confirm has done for those of you attending today. I think the most important thing is that they've given you an opportunity to sign up with them and actually not have to pay their implementation fee and not have to spend money on not have to spend money on getting the platform configured. So there's a couple of other things here. When we look at the number of top performers we identified, we very quickly realized that if we retained them and they connected with other people, they would actually do better. So as some of you know, and actually Alex, you and I have talked about this, after we lined up our performance feedback with other things like who should be sticking around, who should be given more attention, we very quickly realized that the top performers can do more with the things you're providing them rather than just work with their managers. So for instance, we had a sales force that was probably twice the size that it is right now, and we were giving them qualified leads. We were spending more time on them, impacting our clients and organization. And what you quickly found out was that with half the number of AEs, we could actually do twice the amount of work. All right. So I've seen some Q&A pop up in the chat. So I want to grab a couple of those questions, and then Albert, will hand it back to you.
That
All
sounds
right.
great. Actually, Joe, before we get into Q&A, I want to launch a little poll for getting some feedback from the people on the webinar. We have a poll with some follow-up options. I promise we'll get to Q&A soon because the presentation was great. Thanks for sharing your experience with Confirm. And I think people are excited to hear about how they can apply some of this stuff to their companies and account for, rolling out a new platform comes with some new issues potentially. But yeah, looking forward to getting to that. Polls we have here, just one quick question for all of you. We have options for follow-ups. So before we do that, before we get to Q&A, which we will in a minute, one final thanks to Confirm for sponsoring this event, and congrats to Confirm for winning this season's G2 award for easiest to work with business in the performance management category. Sounds great. I mean, it sounds like using the platform is super straightforward. So glad to hear that it's easy to implement and roll out as well. If you're interested in learning more about how organizational network analysis can transform your organization, check them out at confirm.com. If you'd like to request a demo with them, and again, today they have a number of sign-up bonuses, $10,000 onboarding fee waived if you book a demo today, and 20% off your first year with Confirm if you book a demo this week. Also, if you'd like to follow up with Joe Bast, or if you'd like to join the People community, select those options. I see some folks voting for People Slack community. Vote on there. We'll follow up with you, get you on there, get you access to that community. And again, we'll also be sending out the recording and links through email. I think that's it. Last couple of seconds on the poll. Get your final votes in now, and I will end it there, and we can then move on to Q&A. Joe.
So I want to grab Tiana's question here, which is a great one because I've done some research with our company about this, and I've actually asked Confirm a little bit about whether or not people who work more cross-functionally or have been around longer actually do better. And so the question that Tiana asked was, how do you account for some roles just naturally interfacing with more people, like a product manager, versus someone being more behind the scenes? And so there's a couple things here. First of all, in manager-based performance ratings, there's no way to account for who's working more cross-functionally or who's getting more exposure across the organization. But what it does do is it gives people a chance to identify their peers, gives them a chance to nominate people that they've seen across the org. So Ava has a question here too. With O&A, how do you control for potential bias or factors not attributed to performance that may affect peer ratings? Another good question. So the research is really clear. The more you spread out ratings, the more people you have observing performance, the less bias there is. Meaning that people in general tend to have bias for the people that they see every day. But when you spread that across a number of people, that bias tends to flatten out. And then Cameron, how does this method address bias? Again, a bias question, particularly recency bias. A couple of things that we learned. One is that people who are identifying others through organizational network analysis very clearly have the opportunity to compare those people to the other people they work with. And so what you actually find out is that people have the opportunity to nominate people that they are generally working with every day. And that bias is now spread out because it's not just based on who you've worked with most recently. All right, let me...
Makes sense.
Albert, if you want to grab another question or two, I'm going to go through the comments here.
Yeah, one thing that I was interested in, and this is actually PJ's question as well, asking where did you get your 3 questions from? Are they industry standard or something that was tailor-made for your organization?
Yeah, so one of the things Confirm does really well is they give you the opportunity to customize both your performance review process and the content. And so we used their standard questions because they were recommended. We thought they were going to be really good for identifying our folks. But
Nice.
if you did want to change the questions, Confirm's implementation consultants are amazing. The platform makes it very easy for you to change the questions that are being asked or who's doing the nominating. So there's so many questions about this research. But one of the most important things is that we're asking the same people the same question across the organization. Which then gives you a chance to compare across functions or across roles.
Interesting. Yeah. Gold star seems like a fun one that you should roll out regardless of what other questions you come up with. Always be able to give out some gold stars.
Absolutely.
Cameron has an interesting question. Are you soliciting any additional feedback, and how do you account for individual career growth across the company? And that ties in, I think, to some other themes I've seen in some of these questions for people who are not at the top. Is the answer, I guess the question is, how do you treat them in terms of professional development or mentoring? What is do you ignore them entirely? That doesn't sound very nice. What is the play for thinking about high performers versus the rest of us?
Yeah, so there's a lot to this question. I think the most important one is that people who end up being identified as having gold stars, or there's a question which we haven't talked about, which is who needs more support or help. Both of these questions have an opportunity for people to identify strengths in others and to identify opportunities where people need more support. And that support might be that they're not the only one who's actually doing their job and they are having an issue with burnout. Yeah, and so there's lots of opportunity to address both who the high performers are and to identify who needs more growth and development.
Makes sense, totally. I've seen some questions too around organizational size and O&A perhaps feeling like a popularity contest. Do you have any sense for, well, I guess maybe one place to start would be how big is your organization and whether it feels like politics are in play the same way that it is in a traditional 360 review or force rank type review and feedback situation?
Yeah, so let's first deal with company size. We're about 200 people, but when we started this process, we were just under 100. It tended to be a great size for us because those people are working with people across regions, across boundaries, across different functions in your organization. And so for us at our size, it gave us a great opportunity to kind of spread those ratings around. The other thing that I think it did very well is it gave us an opportunity to what's the best way to say this? To compare across functions to actually spread out ratings so that the people who were doing the rating and identifying and nominating others were actually people who had seen them and worked with them, not just their managers.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. And I see a question from Morgan here about data used for merit and comp planning. It sounds like you were sort of really aggressive about reflecting the outcomes of this review process in the form of additional compensation. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So there's a couple things here. One is it's not just our O&A analysis that indicates who should be getting rewards and who should be getting opportunities. It's also manager ratings and ratings of performance and potential. And what you find is when you lay the data out, manager ratings, O&A ratings, and ratings of potential, they tend to converge on the highest performers. And so what you very quickly find out is if you're distributing rewards based on who's being identified and who's having an impact on the organization, you find out pretty quickly that the same people get identified regardless of the part of the organization that is that's working with them and helping them perform. The other thing I would say is that we had the opportunity to identify all of our high performers. And then in doing so, we actually ended up, in addition to giving them rewards and promotions, we ended up figuring out who the bottom 10 or 15% were, and then managing them very closely so that when it did come time to put people on performance plans, or when it did come time to work with our lower performers, our managers were very clear on who was the top performer, who needed more help, and who ended up on a plan so that they could be managed aggressively, either to reward them or to move them out.
Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. And I see one other question about pricing. We can follow up with that later. Joe, any other questions from here catch your eye? I think we've addressed most of them, but any other final thoughts or closing comments?
So a couple of things. One is I love to talk about this stuff. Like I absolutely a fan, not just of Confirm, but of new ways to measure performance. If any of you did want to follow up with me directly, or if you want to follow up with Alex, you'll find out pretty quickly that the application of these tools, the application of ratings across the org, this is stuff we love to talk about. And I think it really helps out the people who are leading and driving the organization forward, but it also helps out people who are trying to get broadly exposed and end up with more development that is reflected by the ratings that other people provide.
That sounds great. Morgan, I see your comment about sharing the survey again. Unfortunately, if I share the survey again, it clears all of the existing results. So if you want to just get in touch with us, we can make sure that we reach out to you either from Confirm or Joe, or get you added to the PeoplePeople Slack community. Cool. I think that's it from my end. Joe, thanks so much for sharing your experience with us. It was great hearing about the Confirm platform and how you've rolled it out. And then that time for Q&A was great as well. That's all that I have. Any other final thoughts before we all head out here?
The last thing I would say is, if you have any questions, please reach out to me. Or if you reach out to Confirm, the offer that they've made about implementation and discounts is insane. This is their second or third year. Every time I work with their professional development team, their professional services team, I learn more about what their platform can do and about what we can do to help our people.
Awesome. That's great to hear from a company. You like to see it. Well, cool. Thanks again. And thanks everyone for joining us. Appreciate the time, and thanks for hanging out. Until next time, I'm Albert Wavering, and this has been an HR Chief webinar. Take care.